Before we start, I have one question for you to contemplate before I begin. Are you like the composer Bach or the playwright Noel Coward? Bach said, "Without my morning coffee, I'm just like a dried up piece of goat." While Noel Coward asked, "Why do I drink champagne for breakfast? Doesn't everyone?" So, are you team Bach or are you team Coward? All right, so think about that. Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Schwartz, your drinking companion, and this is the last Lush Life Book Club. For those of you who don't know me, I write the drinks blog, lushlifemanual.com, and I also have been hosting Lush Life podcast for the past 6 years, where I interview people in the drinks industry. Please join me in welcoming my two past guests on the show, Pippa Guy, brand ambassador of Tanqueray Gin, and Jason Clark, brand ambassador of Talisker whiskey. I'm going to start with Pippa. Pippa's career started as a student where she discovered her passion for drinks and hospitality. In August 2015, she was working in Leeds when the manager of the American bar at the Savoy offered her a position. 2 years later, Pippa became a senior bartender, the first female to do so in nearly a century, and also the first female ever to wear the iconic white jacket. During her tenure, the bar won many awards, including World's 50 Best Bars #1. And she made it into the top 4 for International Bartender of the Year 2019. We're here to discuss Pippa's book, Let's Get Fizzical, which is this one. And it's an inspiring mix of classic cocktail recipes such as Bellinis and mimosas, and offers tips, tricks, presentation ideas, and technical know-how to make your cocktails as sensational for the eye as they are for the palate. Next, we have Jason. Jason has been passionately committed to the drinks industry for over 23 years. His cocktail, I didn't mean to say that to make it sound like it was so long, sorry, for 23 years. His cocktail and coffee skills were predominantly gained from working in the New Zealand hospitality industry, but with stints, lucky for us, in London and Melbourne. Among many achievements, he is a former double world-class New Zealand cocktail champion, placing 4th overall at the global final in 2013. He recently designed and launched his first cocktail book, The Art and Craft of Coffee Cocktails, to inspire bartenders to care more about coffee and baristas to get more creative with coffee mixology. So we have two powerhouses here who have written their own books. So let's jump in and find out why you even wanted to write a book in the first place. So why don't we start with Pippa?
I was going to say, who's starting? So I guess for me, actually, it wasn't something that I initiated. I guess, fortunately, Dorothy Kinsley, the publishing house, approached me, and they came to me January 2018, so actually not that long ago, although it feels like a very long time ago, and said, we want somebody to write a book on fizzy cocktails. Is that something that you would be interested in? Is it something that you're passionate about? And I remember when I first got the email, I was really convinced that it was spam. Like I was at home, it was just after Christmas, and I showed it to my mum and I was like, what do you think of this? Like, surely this is like, someone's having a joke here, right? Because it looked like, you know, sometimes you get those dodgy phishing emails that come through. And she was like, well, I don't know, like, why don't you just email back and figure it out? And to begin with, I was really not adamant that I didn't want to do it. It's just something that I never planned on doing, and it felt like a lot of work in a time of my life when I was super, super busy. And I was like, how on earth am I going to fit this into a schedule that is already overly full? So I was kind of adamant that I didn't really want to do it, and my mum was like, stuff like this doesn't really just land on your doorstep, you know, day in, day out, so consider it. So I slept on it for a few weeks, and then got back to them and was like, okay, tell me, how do I do this? I guess was the start.
And Jason?
Yeah, very, very different story to Pippa. I was living in Dubai, and I've always had a passion for writing. I've written a few cocktail articles for newspapers over the years. I hadn't done anything for a while in Dubai. There's not a lot of drinks media out there. And I was looking at doing one project which was very, very different, and I'd started sort of drafting it up, and it was a bit too ambitious, wasn't quite working for me. And then I was managing world-class UAE at the time, and I designed a program, a coffee cocktail program. And as I was doing all the toolkits for it and that, I sort of realized, geez, I've actually got quite a bit of info on this topic. It's really interesting, and actually there's nothing else out there that really covers it as comprehensively as what I could probably do. So why don't I give it a go? And I just, put my head down and got stuck into it. And the more it started coming together, the more excited and addicted to it I got, that I was just like, it went from being, I think I was aiming for about 60 pages to, I think, 210.
Is that all the coffee?
All the coffee just got carried away, just writing away. So it was all just became a real journey. Originally I was going to self-publish, and then I felt that the material was good enough, and I got some demo photos done. I felt that it was good enough to go find a publisher which would get it the exposure that I hoped it would deserve, and so it was a big journey to then get published from there.
What was your relationship to the liquid itself? Like, were you a huge coffee fan? Were you drinking champagne like crazy, or fizzy drinks? I mean, did you even have a relationship with this drink before?
Yes and no. Like, champagne's something that was never part of my life prior to moving to the Savoy. I moved to the Savoy in 2015, so I was 23 at the time, and obviously no 23-year-olds really have champagne budgets, do they? Or maybe they do, who knows. But I remember, I actually hadn't drank proper champagne before going to the Savoy, and I remember Nereus, one of my former colleagues, if anyone has ever met Nereus, he's not a person that you forget very quickly, and after my first shift, he was like, "Darling, are we going for champagne?" And I was like, "Sure." And probably working in an environment where we did a lot of champagnes by the glass. There was a lot of champagne available to us. So tasting and learning was part of the job, and it's something that I really enjoyed. And I guess that was what kind of sparked the passion initially.
And how about you and coffee?
Yeah, coming from New Zealand, we have an amazing coffee industry out there. It's very forward-thinking, really premium for a long time. So growing up in hospitality, even from a young age, I always had a very high standard of making coffee. So sort of fell in love with it. And in New Zealand, you make an average coffee, it's going to get sent back. So you have to be on your game with the milk and the extraction and everything. So and I've always been more focused on cocktails, but I love the precision and the challenge of trying to make the perfect coffee every time. Then as I worked in bars over the years, I've always looked to have a signature coffee cocktail on my menu. Whether this is before the espresso martini had kicked off, I'm talking about early 2000s. It had been invented, but it hadn't really boomed. And so I've always, designed various things to have a little bit of coffee on the menu to perk people up. And so I've actually built quite a repertoire of coffee cocktails. So then when it came to doing this thing for world class and writing the book, I was pulling out old notebooks, and I had all these great coffee cocktails ready to go, thankfully.
Well, you touched on it a little, Jason, but you both were at that time that you created these books working like crazy. I mean, all hours. For anyone who really wants to write a book out there, where did you find the time, and how did you do it, really? Did you weekends, nights? I mean, I know it's really different, but just in case, someone out there might get that call or have a love of a spirit that they want to write a book about, can you talk me through the actual kind of technique you use to get the job done?
I wouldn't say there was much technique to it on on my behalf. Yeah, like I kind of already said at the time, like I was really super busy. So we'd won World's Best Bar November 2017 and had like the busiest, October. So I had like the busiest November, December. As you're kind of always doing bars anyway, that time of year is just like back up against the wall. You don't really do anything else but work and sleep. So when it got through to January, I was a bit like, stars in my eyes, trying to sort of figure out what was going on. I had loads of like international guest shifts as well planned over like the next sort of 6 months, and they said this is very much like we want to publish by November. So we started talking in January. I had the book finished by June for feedback a month later. Everything went to press the end of July and it was published the beginning of November. So it was really like a super tight turnaround. I basically sort of really made a decision with myself, like, am I going to do this or am I not? Because if I am, it's going to be like pretty whole consuming. So quite like a grown-up decision, I guess, to make for a 26-year-old, just turned 26 at the time. I knew that I was going to have to say no to a lot of like social things, miss quite a lot of birthdays. And actually, like, I kind of knew at the time, I was like, I know I'll look back on it in a few years and I won't remember the things that I've missed, but it's very hard to like know at that time that you're going to miss out on stuff and that you would spend like 8 hours on a Saturday and Sunday writing and editing and like doing all these things. And would be working mostly nights. I requested to work nights, so I'd get up at like 10, start working from 11, work from 11 until like about 3, go be at work from 4, work from 4 till 2, get home at 3, sleep till 10, and did that constantly pretty much for 6 months. So
we'll get to you in a second, Jason, but did you, because it was such a different experience, did you have to give them chapters, like, okay, every 2 weeks they wanted this, and they wanted this, and they wanted this, kind of relentless that way?
Yes, kind of. Like, they were actually really surprisingly flexible with me. Like, I structured most of the book myself. I didn't find out that ghostwriters were a thing until about 3 months after we published, and I was like, what do you mean there are people that write for you? Absolutely outraged. I did, yeah, so like I kind of set my own targets as well, because I knew like what I wanted the sections to be, how I wanted the flow to go, so I kind of set my own targets with like knowing what I was doing as well. So I was like, I'll have section 1 finished by this time, and then I'll be away for 2 weeks. And I remember we were going to BCB in Brooklyn at some point, like this is coming really towards the end, so like beginning of summer, so like end of the book. And I remember being sat on the plane trying to get on the Wi-Fi to like send this last press thing, and Declan was next to me. He's like, you're not going to make it, you're not going to make it. I'm there like, yes I am, yes I am, yes I am. I was like, send, just made it. And I was like, okay, fell asleep the entire flight. It's like, do you want a drink? I was like, no.
Now, Jason, so your experience was completely different. How did you manage the time to write the book?
Yeah, so different. At first, there was no pressure from a publisher because I was looking to do it myself, but I wanted to fly through the material. But I'd already created this toolkit to teach bartenders. The original world-class thing I was designing was for bartenders to be able to create their own signature coffee cocktail. And to do that, getting to know the coffee, getting to know the consumer, and then how to bring that to life. And so I've actually managed to sort of copy and paste a bit of stuff from that. I wrote the sort of the ultimate contents, and by knowing the contents, then I could work out what I needed. But yeah, that just ballooned and grew as I went through. I was like, oh shit, I really could do with filling that gap, and I should do this. But yeah, I was working full time in Dubai, luxury brands ambassador, and fortunate thing out there is, the weather is incredibly hot for 7 months of a year. And I'd been there about 2 years, and if you're in Dubai, if you're not in an office or at home, you're in a bar. And I was generally in bars, I was in bars a lot for work, but when I come home, instead of playing PlayStation or watching TV or something, didn't watch TV out there, it was like, right, I'm going to sit at my desk, I'm going to pour a coffee, and I'm going to just get stuck into it. And so it was really about evenings for me and just churning out in evenings. And then as I realised I need to fill gaps with drinks, I'd be like, I've got to test these out. So I would sort of take over my workspace on weekends or times when I wasn't needed, loo days or whatever, and I would go and set up cocktail stuff and buy ingredients and design drink and go, cool, okay, let's go into the book, and I'd draft it down, take it home, plug it in. But yeah, I had a lot of experimentation to do.
Did you put a time limit on yourself?
No, I don't know if I did. Maybe I did. I got addicted to it. I was like, I'm really enjoying it, and I knew if I took my foot off the gas that I might fizzle out and run out of steam and lose track. So I just really pushed. And then when I decided I wanted a publisher, that really put the pressure on, and I pitched it to close. I probably sent 100 emails to publishers, and mostly didn't hear back anything, or rejection letters and that. And then I found the publisher I really, really wanted. I harassed them, and I actually came over here for a trip for Christmas and New Year's Eve to party really and see some friends. And I had a meeting. I managed to book a meeting with a publisher, and I was like, right, this is my money shot mode. I've got to sell this in. And I basically got the manuscript I'd done, and I got it printed up, put some beautiful photos in it, and gave them almost a real taste of what the finished product could be. And when they got that in their hands and saw it, they were like, sold. Okay, that's pretty cool. Like you've got that was at Christmas 2017, and I was published September 2018. So like, yeah, I had 8 months really to bosh out the rest.
Can I ask questions? Am I allowed to ask questions?
No, it's only yes, of course.
Did you ever find it difficult to like keep up your motivation, not knowing that you had like a definite publisher signed? I can like just trying to picture myself in that situation where you'd like maybe get tired or be like, oh, do I want to go to this event or do I want to sit and write? And like I don't know if it's not a guaranteed thing. Was there ever a time where you like lost the motivation for it?
That's why I asked about a time, your own time limit too.
Yeah, I think I would wane a little bit, but I just got this really focused in on wanting to bring it to life. And as I got a local photographer, a young guy, as a student who just sort of graduated, and got him to do a few photos, and they came out stunningly beautiful. They're in the book now, and I was like, wow, I've got to bring this to life, and that's just really, really motivated me. But yeah, I mean, on the motivation thing, I sort of announced I was going to do a second book back in lockdown, and that hasn't quite progressed as I would have liked, because I haven't had that pressure on, I guess.
We won't hold you to that tonight, so don't worry about that. Now, you both wrote cocktail books, and there are some incredible cocktail books out there historically, as you well know, of course, from the Savoy. Were there any cocktail books that influenced you when you were writing your own book?
Yeah, I mean, for obvious reasons, the Savoy cocktail book was a massive help to me. It's been a big part of my life growing up through the bartending ranks, I guess. So that was incredibly useful. There's also another really cool book called A Seat at the Bar. I can't remember. It's from a bar in Melbourne that now I can't remember what it's called. I want to say the Everly, maybe. But it's a really cool book. So it basically goes through and describes drinks, and it's like if you have this ingredient, this ingredient, this ingredient, and you swap this, it then becomes a this cocktail. So like that was really helpful. So a lot of the drinks in my book, they wanted like a classic, and then so like a classic Bellini, and then like 2 other variations. So like how could you change this? So the classic is with peach, and then like I did a Bellini and a cranberry or something. So like with swapping one ingredient, like what changes, how does it become a different drink? And I found it really fascinating because there's so many classic cocktails, particularly in like the whiskey department, where you just swap one ingredient and it becomes an entirely different classic cocktail. So I found that really useful for me.
And Jason?
The first thing that motivated me was the fact that there wasn't anything in my category. So that was like, right, I'm going to fill this gap. But there's a book by, I guess she's a bartender / botanist called Lottie Muir, and she wrote Wild Cocktails. It was with the same publisher, and she did simple drinks with nice sort of natural wild ingredients, and I liked the format and the styling, so I almost picked up her book and said, okay, I'm going to format mine like this, and then I'm going to lay it out and design it like that, and I'm going to target that publisher, and basically if I give them a demo of it almost fitting their format, then it's almost hard for them to say no, because I've done half of the work for them in a way. So that was
That's really smart.
a big one. But images and things like the Death & Co, beautiful cocktail book. But yeah, I think...
Any historical ones?
Um,
I guess in your career maybe that you were always drawn to and you always had a copy of in your, in your house while you were starting your career?
I've got lots of classic books and lots of great ones, but none of them I didn't really format mine on or take inspiration from any in particular. King Cocktail, Day de Groff, Salvatore Calabrese, classic cocktails, but yeah, nothing directly, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And so, were you expecting, or should I say, who did you expect your audience to be? The beginner, someone who knows their way around, a home bartender? What kind of person were you thinking that you were talking to?
Well, mine was definitely aimed completely not at the bartending crowd. It was 100% a book for, and the sort of reason why I published the beginning of November was it was supposed to be like a stocking filler for the Christmas that year for, aunt, uncle, whoever, that liked their fizz and wanted to know a little bit more about how you play around with that and make it interesting. I think one of the best compliments that I've had on the book from one of my mum's friends was, she said the diagrams are really useful because they kind of break down visually how much of each ingredient should go in the glass. And I was like, I didn't really think about that when that wasn't done on purpose, but she was like, I'm a very visual person, text isn't I struggle with it. So actually to see that if I'm making a Bellini that it should be this much purée and this much bubbles, that's really helpful. So that
for those of you who haven't read the book, we can pass it around if you want. But each cocktail is kind of architecturally done. So you see the portion of gin or the portion of fizz, whatever it is. It's quite architectural.
Yeah. So that was definitely not done on purpose, but definitely probably one of the most beneficial accidental things happen for the beginner crowd, I guess.
And Jason?
Yeah, I was trying to tick all the boxes, really. I wanted to inspire bartenders to care more about coffee. Most bartenders have a coffee machine in the bar, don't give a shit about quality coffee, and it could be disappointing, trying to get a good coffee in a bar. And I wanted them to care more about the coffee. I wanted them to get more creative and know there's so much more out there than the Irish coffee and the espresso martini. So I wanted this wow factor for them. I wanted to educate them about coffee, how to use it in cocktails, and inspire them to go crazy, because my book's got over 75 recipes, but I think it's infinite the amount of recipes and where people can take it. So I wanted to blow them away and get them inspired, but I also wanted baristas to get more interested with coffee drinks. Every drink's got alcohol in it in the book, but I think they could have some more fun in cafes. And I wanted consumers to have a piece of eye candy they could sort of get and go, wow, these are really cool. When I go to bars, I'm going to look for more interesting coffee cocktails and challenge baristas and challenge bartenders. And I structured it from each chapter. We did it by method. Each chapter starts with the easiest drink and works way through the most complex. And I gave it a rating out of 1 to 3. So you could open the book and say, okay, this is a beginner drink, I'll give this a go, or it's an intermediate, or it's really advanced. And yeah, as a bit of a guideline for people so they could find their way through, I guess.
The photos are insane. I mean, every single one, you just want to reach into the book and take that cocktail out and drink it. They are fabulous. So where did you find the photographer? You mentioned it a little. Was it a pal that you just...
Yeah, I tried through work, I tried to grab someone that was in an agency that we worked with. He was unavailable, recommended this young kid. He was from Ukraine and didn't speak much English, but I got him in. And one of the key things for me with cocktails is you've got to capture it now. Like, you've got 10 seconds really to capture it with foams and textures and things. And he was just on the ball and really sharp, even with the communication problems. And first day we did, I think we got 6 cocktails done, and by the end of it we were getting 24 drinks done in like a 6-7 hour session, because we were just boshing them out. And so and after that first shot, I knew, right, he's the guy I want. Let's work a deal out. I'm going to pay you. You're going to get, I'm going to pay you out of my own pocket. I don't have a book deal or anything, but if I get these images done, I know that a publisher will back me, and that will come through in the end, and it all paid off.
And Pippa, were you able to work with the photographer as well?
Yes, so I used a guy called William Raval. He's actually a food photographer. He's done a lot of the food. DK have a lot of food cookbooks. Done some work with Mary Berry and a few other people like that that are in the like DK crowd of publishers. And he was really good. I'd not done hardly any like drinks styling or shooting or anything at that time. If I knew then what I knew now about how difficult or easy some things can be, it would have been very useful. But obviously, life as a brand ambassador, you end up doing lots of shoots and other things here and there. So I've learned a lot more now. But yeah, he was really good. He was very like visual, very artistic. He actually has a studio in South London that we were using, which was great for me as well, because I was like trading off shifts at the time to like get the days off to get these photos done. We did them all in 3 days. So I did 2 17-hour shifts in a row, Tuesday, Wednesday, so that I could have the Thursday, Friday off to do this. So I remember going in on the first day and they were like, oh, we'd like to do your portraits. And I'd like just dragged myself out of bed for like my second 5-hour sleep in a row, and was like, I just kind of like not washed my hair, hadn't brushed it, had no makeup on, and I was like, really? Now?
You just take a picture of the cocktails, right?
Yeah, I was like, can you edit the bags, like get them out? I remember like really hating all of them at the time. Like now I love it. I look back on it, I'm like, I can probably tell that I was tired then, but I don't think anyone else could have.
Now the cocktails in the book. Now, Pippa, did you have much control over what cocktails you could put in the book? Were they 100% your choice?
Yeah, completely. When there was like a few sort of obvious classics that they really wanted in there, Bellini, Aperol Spritz, Mimosa, etc. So we kind of broke them down into like the 10, like the first section of 10, which is like the kind of famous like aperitifs, I guess. Then the middle section was like classics, I guess. But they all had, or majority of them all had 1 or 2 twists at least, plus like maybe a non-alcoholic version. And then the last, I think 5 or 10 were all my own creations. So I got a lot of like creativity in there as well. Obviously, like there's lots of classic fizzy cocktails. There's quite a lot of stuff that's like already been covered to get in there. But I wanted to make sure there was room for me to like put some of my recipes in as well. I didn't want it to just be all other people's work. Mm-hmm. What would have been really interesting is like at the time, this was just after like the massive Prosecco boom, and everyone was like loving fizzy drinks, fizzy cocktails. Now in the last like year maybe, there's been a huge rise in non-alcoholic fizz. And it would have been really interesting at the time if that could be something that I could have included, but it wasn't really a thing then. It's only really sort of come into fruition in the last, I guess, like 6 months or a year.
The next book. Uh-huh. Now, Jason, you have so many cocktails in the book. How did you confine yourself just to the ones that you have, when it sounds like you just could have gone on forever making cocktails? I mean, which ones did you start with and then grow into having, really?
Yeah, it was tough. I was just trying to get content down, really, and just having ideas, and felt I would write out the recipe and almost feel like it was going to be in the book before I'd even made it. And so then I would, the next weekend I'd get the ingredients, test it out, or even make it directly for the photographer, capture it, and then taste it myself, and then make some adjustments to it, and then it was in. There's about 10, maybe 6 drinks that didn't make the cut just because I didn't have enough space with the publisher. But yeah, I did work that I wanted to do by method, so
right.
Shaken, hot. What did we do?
Built.
Shaken, hot. Yeah, built, stirred, and blended. And I just felt each chapter needed to have the sort of the right amount. Each one would start with a classic. So the espresso martini is the first shaken drink, of course, and then I just go crazy with things, really.
Uh-huh.
And there's some really weird and wonderful stuff that you can't really categorize other than it's a shaken drink. But it was about having fun and showing experience and showing the creativity with it, I guess.
Well, let's go into some of the ones that you created yourselves. So let's see, what do we have here? We have the ones from tonight, but we'll go to the ones that we're not drinking tonight first. So why don't we start with the blueberry Bellini? So how did you create that?
I guess there's like a lot of categories of a lot of the drinks in the book. I spent a lot of time just like throwing fizz in cocktails that already existed to like see if it works, if you could like make it fizzy. So like French martini and Southside, there's lots of things that like by just throwing a little bit of fizz in changes the drink completely. Bellini was a really fun one because that kind of works with everything, and like part of the beginning of the book was like sections on things like how to stir, how to shake. And then there's a bit about we wanted to make sure that people could make all of the ingredients, or the majority of the ingredients that were in the recipes, so you didn't look at it and think like, I don't have blueberry puree, how on earth do I make this? I have no idea. So at the start of the book there's a section on like infusions and purees and syrups, etc. Blueberry Bellini, can't talk, was actually something that I made for my mum and her friends, although they wouldn't let me say this in the book at the time. I was like a bit sad. But one of the things that my mum absolutely loves is blueberries, so just one of the fruits that I kind of experimented with in the puree department. You can imagine the state of my kitchen as we're going through making all of these things. So yeah, it's nice to kind of look to the people in your life as well for a little bit of inspiration sometimes as well.
Absolutely. And Jason, how about your Beats by Jay? I love that one.
Beats by Jay. Yeah, that was a drink. I wanted, one of the big messages in the book I wanted to get across was that coffee doesn't need to be the main flavour. Espresso martini, Irish coffee, there's no mistaking that those are coffee drinks, and you drink those, you're going to be buzzing, and you might only want one or two. So I wanted to do drinks that use coffee as a more delicate modifier, and the flavours of the coffee selected would pair with the other ingredients. So that's essentially a whiskey sour. I can't remember. I should have had I read through the book before came tonight. Essentially a whiskey sour with.
I have a copy.
Yeah.
You wanna look?
Beetroot, the earthy flavours of beetroot, raspberry and hibiscus, which were notes I pulled out of this particular type of coffee. And the coffee element, just a small amount to match the flavours and give you, a little bit of a caffeine buzz without that full-blown overload of caffeine. Yeah.
All right, we'll do one more each. The Prosecco Mojito.
Yes, so like I said, it was supposed to be a book for like the general public, not for bartenders. So one of the things that the publisher was really keen on doing is taking drinks that people already know and love and making them fizzy, I guess. So like, like I said, like French martini, mojito, trying to make all these kind of classic cocktails and things that people recognize. There's always like a category of drinks where, like, I'm sure any bartenders in the room, if you ever make a mojito, you can guarantee that your next like 4 or 5 checks are going to have a mojito on them, because everyone's like, I know it, I trust it, I know I like it. So mojito was one of the drinks we did like 2 or 3 variations of as well, because it's something that's like accessible to people, I guess.
And how about Death by Caffeine?
Ooh, so yeah, this is probably one of the most crazy drinks on there. Put it up on my Instagram yesterday. It's amazing the comments I get around it and that. Originally designed for a cocktail competition, and I used an Easter egg, and I put a hole in an Easter egg, sat it in a bowl with dry ice vapor, and you put the cocktail inside the Easter egg. An Easter egg is chocolate, it's a great vessel for a cocktail. So you put a funnel in, drop the cocktail in, you put a foam on it, pop a straw in, and then when you drink it, you're sipping this first layer of sort of coffee cocktail, and then there's this like different texture comes through when you hit the foam, and then the idea is you crack it open, eat the chocolate to finish the experience. And that drink I did for a competition, did really well, and then I evolved it over years. I had it on menus and bars that I worked in, and it was so cool. You'd bring it out, so it's a chocolate sphere, and I worked out a way of pre-batching it so you could serve it quickly, but chocolate sphere, flick it with a blowtorch to make it sticky, put like magic dust all over it, bring it out to the guests with a coffee, dry ice vapor under a cloche, and you bring it out, and you bring one out into the restaurant, and next minute you're selling 5 or 6 of them, and it's just showing off really. But it's just really fun, and that's, for me, I want to inspire people that think beyond the glass and push boundaries and have fun. And for me, I love some of these serious bartender cocktails and how nerdy we can get, but I also love just giving people experiences that make them go wow and have fun, and take away some of the pretentious element and just get quirky with things, and that's what that was.
Well, before we open it to questions, I thought we'd end kind of the same way, because this is the last one that I end my podcast, which is I always ask for top tips for the home bartender. And I was wondering if maybe you could give anyone out there a top tip for either working with coffee or working with fizz in a cocktail.
Well, a huge message throughout my book was around, I've got 2. One's really quick. Shit coffee makes a shit drink. So use good coffee, but find a coffee you like and then find out how to use it. Second, I'm a huge fan of cold brew coffee, concentrated cold brew coffee, because you can make a large batch, whether it's 500 mils or 5 litres, and it is more shelf stable. You can keep it in the fridge for 2 weeks. You get consistency, you get speed of service. So I use cold brew a lot, and a cold extraction just means you can control the flavors really well. It doesn't oxidize, and particularly in the summer months, like I've always got cold brew in my fridge. There's a difference between regular drinking cold brew, which is diluted, and concentrated cold brew, which is closer to espresso. So for cocktails and espresso martini style, good old cold brew coffee is a great way to go.
Fantastic. Pippa?
I don't know, top tip for the home bartender: buy the book.
And also, if we have any potential or authors out there, what would you kind of their top tip for anyone who wants to delve into writing a cocktail book?
Don't do it. No.
No, that's not a good one.
I don't know, I guess just like structure your time, think about it carefully, set yourself deadlines that you can meet, but push yourself as well. I think it's one of these things that they always tend to come along at a time when you're super busy, because when you're kind of doing well and you're doing lots of things and you're kind of at the forefront of everyone's vision, that's when it's the best time to do something that's like a bit more kind of outrageous and out there, like publish your own book. So never underestimate yourself. Don't think that you can't do it. I don't know, give it a go.
Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, you've just got to, if you've got a real vision, you've just got to go guns blazing and really, really go for it. What really helped me was looking through a lot of other books and then working out my format, writing that contents page first, and just sort of ploughing through it really. And I would say, for me, I know a lot of authors could probably just do it as a Word document, but I found it really helpful to almost to lay it out and structure it like the publisher wants to see it, and that just meant when I pitched it to them and showed it to them, they could really see it, feel it, and it helped me sell it in. And it was, once they saw it, there was no turning back, and they helped push me across the line.
Such great advice. Such great advice. All right. So, do we have any questions out there for these two?
How do you choose which fizz goes with what?
Let me repeat it. Pippa, when you're developing a cocktail, how do you choose which fizz goes with what? That's a great question.
So one of the intros that we did in the start of the book, there's about 6 pages of which fizz is which. So like what essentially is the difference between champagne, Prosecco, Cava. So that, I think that was like a good place to start. And then also a top tip for anyone that's thinking about writing a book, buy a whiteboard. I found that really useful to be able to like scribble things in and rub them out and like change and edit as you go without like writing down things and losing documents, etc., which is something that I do a lot of. And then I also started, one of the things that I started doing was like writing down flavors for each different style of fizz. And then I realized that there's quite a lot of crossover. So there's actually a nice Venn diagram of like 3 circles of, I think it's like champagne, Cava and Prosecco maybe, and like the crossover in the middle of flavors that work with all 3, flavors that work with these 2, and like suggestions for which ones you can swap out for which. So like obviously champagne's very expensive, but English sparkling has a very similar flavor profile because of the soils in like the south of England. So like making suggestions of which ones you can swap to on a budget that have like slightly more friendly, but with a similar kind of profile in the bottle, I guess. Does that answer it?
Yeah, I think we're going to ask Jason that too. With different kinds of coffee, there must be a billion different kinds of coffee as well.
Yeah, it is tricky, and people often think coffee just tastes like coffee, but I guess explore the coffee, try it, and try and think about the flavors you've got there, and then what's going to complement those. And if you brew it in a way like a filter style, you'll be able to break down the flavors a little bit more and pick those out, and then work out what's going to work. But coffee probably does give you a bit of versatility. It depends on the brew type you're using, and you know, read the packet, get a few flavor notes, and then pick quality.
Experimentation.
And trust, I guess, trust your own taste buds. Really, just trust what you
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yes.
Well,
Wait, I have to ask the question again
Yeah.
so that we can have it. Would he ever use, gasp, decaf?
Well, I have a motto, which is death before decaf.
I guess that answers the question.
No, but in saying that, my wife loves coffee, but she gets heart palpitations from it. Can't drink it anymore. And for me, drinking is all about pleasure and flavour. So yeah, absolutely. I didn't feature it in the book, but I've made many things since. And yeah, if you love the flavour of coffee, then I think you should be able to enjoy coffee cocktails as well. So just maybe read some flavour notes and swap it out for something similar. Stumbled on a really good decaf coffee liqueur recently. The guys from Conquer Spirits down in Bournemouth. And my wife loves that sort of over ice, so feel free to adapt as you need to.
And everyone's not saying, I want that.
Okay. Wait a sec. What other cocktail other than a mojito makes the crowds go crazy when you put one out?
So I guess Jason kind of touched on this as well with like thinking outside of the glass and any kind of serve that's got like either an amazing garnish or like a touch of theatre, people pouring stuff tableside or like cracking the egg or whatever you had to do for yours, or like anything, you know, kind of with smoke. People are, I think particularly now on like the other side of lockdowns, are looking for things that have, you know, some character to them, something Instagrammable. Everyone wants to show off what they're drinking, don't they? So there tends to be like those kind of things. Now I guess like the mojito reference was maybe something that a few years ago, but I guess that's also about people like visually acknowledging something that they know that they like. And obviously, like, you can kind of tell what a mojito is in any bar at any time. So, yeah, does that answer it?
Used to get it with Cosmos back in the day. We'd do the flame zest at the table, and it's, you know, everybody's seen that now. It's not so wow anymore. But back then, people were like, oh wow, what's that magic? And that would help you sell more Cosmos. But it can depend on the environment as well. You know, if mojito in the right environment, you just think it almost reminds you, oh my god, that would be the perfect, refreshing deliciousness right now. It's about the moment and place.
Vibrant colours always seem to do well. Like
Yeah,
you say,
and right
Cosmos,
now-
Aperol Spritz, anything with like a
Yeah.
vibrant visual tends to be like, people see it going past and they're like, oh yeah, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, on the top 10 list right now of popular cocktails, there's a coffee cocktail, espresso martini, and a fizz cocktail, the Aperol Spritz. So obviously there's a reason why I have you both up here at the same time. Anyone else? Any other questions? Yes. The question was, what was your most memorable coffee/fizz cocktail experience?
I'll go. I've got first thing for me. I'll never forget being, I don't know, 15 or so, and having my first ever flat white in New Zealand, and just the texture and the cream. Wasn't really into coffee. I hated making it for my parents when I was a kid, and then the creamy, velvety texture with great crema, and that just blew my mind and got me started. And then cocktail-wise, there's a bar in New Orleans, and they do a Cafe Brûlot, and it's this big flaming cocktail with cognac and orange zest, and they pour coffee in at the end to cool it down, and that was like just game-changing for me, just the theatrics and the fun of it. It's in the book too.
I love that you were making coffee for your parents.
My parents worked in the bar industry, and they would always sleep in on the weekends, and it was the only way we could get them out of bed to do anything.
Hysterical.
They needed their coffee first. So.
And this is the reason you wrote a coffee cocktail book, you realize. And Pippa, hopefully you weren't popping champagne for your parents to get up in the morning.
I mean, not
Unless
to get
they
up
were
in the
team
morning,
coward,
no, yeah.
right? The team Noel coward.
Team coward. I mean, I'm definitely team coward. I don't know, like, I have lots of incredible memories of the Savoy and things that went on inside the doors, many of which I can't talk about, but managed to taste some of the most like exquisite champagnes there. And we'd often do like training after shift because bottles are open, and if they're particularly like expensive bottles, you know that you might not sell that before it goes off in a day or two's time or goes flat. So actually a lot of my memories of drinking like really exquisite champagne is all sat around like with our jackets and shirts off, ties undone, like sat on the floor in the American bar just drinking really expensive champagne at 2 o'clock in the morning. So that's probably my top.
Anyone
Sorry,
else?
one more.
Yes.
First ever B52 shot as well, when the Grand Marnier's is hot, and then you got the colour in it. That was a real game changer for me as well.
I feel like Baby Guinness is on a comeback as well, isn't it? Is that you? Did you start that?
It's coffee ice cream for me. Oh my God, I love coffee ice cream as a child. Yes, Allie. If you hadn't written a book on coffee/fizz, would there be any other thing that you would want to write a cocktail book on?
Yeah, possibly. Like, I don't know, maybe like kind of how you said earlier, maybe like a non-alcoholic version of this book. There's a lot out there now in that world, and it's only expanding literally by the minute. So, I mean, apart from that, gin is probably the next thing that I could talk about for a long time. But
Good,
yeah, exactly.
good answer.
That's an easy one, isn't it?
And that second book, Jason?
Well, there's two, of course.
You hear it now for the first time.
I would really like to do a similar format, but all around Scotch whisky, and really dive deep and explore whisky. There's a real culture with single malt that you know, it's blasphemy, it's sacrilege to put anything in it other than a few drops of water. So I'd love to just really help. I've been doing it for years with my team in Diageo, trying to open people's minds to exploring other flavours with whisky. So I'd like to do that. Before I started writing that book, the book I was dabbling with was to do featuring the top cocktails in the world and in the places where they're made. So, you know, La Floridita, the daiquiri, and ideally go to each location, you know, meet the bartenders, take some photos, and present, you know, the world's 50 coolest cocktails and many classics. But you know, I'm sure these guys would have 5 drinks they could put on the list, I would say. But yeah, those iconic drinks and iconic cities sort of thing would be a dream come true for any bartender / author to write, I think.
Fabulous. Well, I think we have to end it here because of time, but thank you so much for joining me, Pippa and Jason. Let's hear it for them. And of course, I have to thank Diageo Reserve and Tanqueray for sponsoring. We could not have done it without them, so thank you. And of course, Oriole. Rosie and Edmund aren't here tonight, but they send their love, and it's just been a dream to do these and to have them here at one of my favorite places in the world. And thank you all for coming out and supporting. So stick around, get a book. They're here tonight, special prices, and some of the proceeds goes to the Drinks Trust. And there's music, try some of the cocktails. It's a great place to hang out forever. So thank you so much, everyone. Yay.